Hello. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Hello, Adrian.
Hello.
You hear me well?
Yes, I do.
Right. So, hello, everyone. I'm very happy to host this new PentaBAR Special today. I am Cyril de Lastérie from France. And I am a VP of Company Culture of Pentalog, which means that I'm very interested in company culture and the transformation of the world, the transformation of the society, the transformation of people. And that's why we have this great guest today, because if there is someone who can talk about transformation of the world, it's him. His name is Adrian. I will very soon present him to everyone. But before, I would tell something about Bolt, because Adrian is a VP of product at Bolt. And for those who don't know Bolt, it's a quite huge company, was created in 2013 in Estonia by a very young guy who was 19 years old at this moment in Tallinn, the capital. His name is Markus Billig. And Bolt since then is proposing a kind of mobile application which allows anyone to order a driver. That was the first activity, and then also to find electric scooters, another activity, and food delivery and others. And we will see with Adrian the other things that they are preparing for us. Bolt is present in 45 countries, which is a lot. I was looking for the number of employees, you will tell me, but I found like 3,000 employees.
Yeah, that's correct.
Correct. More than 100 million clients, if you addition all the
yes.
I mean, the activities.
Very good research.
yeah, I do my job. And at the beginning of the year, you announced a 628 million investment, which is also a lot, with a 8 billion valuation, which means that you're kind of unicorn. So becoming a unicorn in 9 years means you need to have a good product, and then you need to have a good VP product. So to introduce you to the people, Adrian, I would say that I did my researches too for you. You are an expert in many things, in mobility, in maps, in geo and location-based technologies, in B2C marketplaces, in automotive, complex back-end platforms, and autonomous driving. Too many expertise, Adrian. Is it possible to be an expert of everything like that?
I'm old.
Yes, no, you're not old.
No, I was also fortunate that I got to work on some interesting things alongside quite a lot of smart people, so that helped with the learning part.
Yes, we're coming to that. You're passionate about product management in tech companies, which with over 10 years of experience in both startups and large global companies in Europe, in the US and Asia. I know that you're 43 years old. You live in Tallinn, so in Estonia, most of the time. If not, you travel a lot. Your astrological sign is Gemini. You're a Gemini. Okay, so that's not bad. So your birthday is very soon. You're very tall. You're like 1 meter and 96 centimeters. I say it because we don't see you. That's the problem with the remote. We just see your head. But this guy is huge. This guy, and very sportive. You do some weightlifting, like musculación in Spanish. You like traveling, you like whiskey, and you like good food. I was watching that on your Instagram. Sorry, I stalked you.
Yeah, that research is
yeah, you know,
quite thorough.
So now everybody knows your company and everybody knows you. First question, you know, I was on the Bolt webpage, which is a simple thing we do. And we had this sentence: we are building the future of mobility. Bolt is the first European super app with the mission to make urban mobility more affordable, safe, and sustainable. So I was wondering, what is a super app, Adrian?
So the concept of super apps kind of like originated from Asia, and it has this concept that in one particular app you get to solve a lot of problems, and it kind of gathers more of your jobs to be done into one application, and because it has overall lower cost of acquisition and in theory higher customer lifetime value, it makes sense in some conditions to group things in one app, and then you have a super app. There are debates whether this is a good idea or this is a bad idea. In general, the answer is, as always, it depends on your situation as a company, your clients, what is the problem that you're trying to solve. But in general, if we look at Bolt, at a mobility company in general, there are two main things that we are trying to do for now, because we might try to do more things in the future. But right now we try to bring people from point A to point B, and we try to bring goods from point A to point B. So this is either ride hailing or micromobility, where you can use one of our scooters, one of our electric bicycles. You can use Bolt Drive. We have also Bolt Drive in some of the countries where you can use your phone to open the app, use your phone to open the car, drive it around, and park it wherever, close the car when you're done. So we do have a lot of products that are focused on personal mobility. And then also you have the goods transportation part, in which we have food delivery, but also grocery deliveries. We have recently launched Bolt Market around several countries, and we've entered, let's say, this like quick commerce, 15 minutes type of delivery type of commerce. So in these conditions, we are a mobility company because we're delivering these goods to you. The way that we are focused around our vision and to make cities better, have a better quality of life, and in general replace car ownership. If you look at all the problems that are being currently solved with a privately owned car, part of it can be replaced with ride hailing. Part of it can be replaced with Bolt Drive, because you might want to take weekend rides, or you might want to get a car for 1 or 2 days to have a different type of trip. You might need a different size of vehicle because you might be going to a shop to buy some furniture for your house. So basically you're solving all those problems with Bolt Drive. You're going to have smaller distances within the city. If it's good weather, then you can use a Bolt scooter, you can use a Bolt electric bike assisted bicycle. And then obviously you have public transportation to complement all that. And this is actually what we mean by this type of approach, where you don't need your personal car anymore, because all the potential use cases for a car, for owning a car, can be served by products that we're using. And the reason for us grouping that into a super app approach, even though we have two apps, right? Like we have the people mobility app, where you have ride hailing, you have scooters, you have bicycles, and you have Bolt Drive, and we have the delivery app, which has Bolt Food and Bolt Groceries. And depending on the countries that we're talking about, some of these services exist, or some of these services will be launched sometimes in the future.
It was just one sentence.
Yes.
You can breathe a little between, it's okay. No, it's a great answer. Thank you. How did you become VP of product? What was your background? How do we become the VP of product of a unicorn like that? It's like it's just not like asking. You had some background, I guess.
I mean, so from the perspective of the work in product management, I did quite a lot of stuff from an entrepreneurial perspective. I had different companies or projects that were not within the online environment, let's say. I graduated law school because no one is perfect. I have a master's in marketing, and that's how I started approaching product management from the marketing point of view. Then slowly switched towards digital marketing, taught myself how to code, and learn more about the digital part. And then I realized that I'm much better at something else than at coding itself, but it was very useful to understand the structure of how complex software systems can work. And then I started looking into startups. I started a few of my own projects, some of them successful, most of them less successful, which kind of like accelerated the learning. And then I slowly did the move towards product management.
Excuse me, Adrian, can you tell us just quickly a little more about these projects, the one who failed, the one who didn't? Just in a few words.
Sure. So we, together with a co-founder, we were trying to build something that we called like a location-based application for networking at events and conferences. That was like 7+ years ago, back in the day when we used to have conferences and people used to meet and travel places. So we had an investment from Telecom Italia, and we were working. We already had developed the app. They invested at a kind of like, let's say, later stage. It was, even though it was just the two of us, me and my co-founder at that time, we had a bit of traction in North America. We had an experience with a corporate accelerator. Overall, a good offer as an investment from their side. However, in practice, we got a bit defocused onto where we thought our product should go. So we were encouraged to pivot a bit in a different direction. So from what we were trying to do, the end result wasn't great. So at the end of the acceleration process, at the end of the process, we kind of said, it's time to pause this because it wasn't growing.
But it was your first experience in localization.
That was also true. And after that, I started working as a product manager in a company called Telenav. But at the same time, because I was working quite a lot with entrepreneurial communities around Europe, I was quite present in a lot of startup weekend events and helping out with mentoring at several accelerators. And in this context, we founded this tiny little tech ranch of Central and Eastern Europe called the 150sec.com. And the goal was like short, straight to the point articles about what's happening in the tech ecosystem in Central and Eastern Europe. And it was in English, 20+ countries in Central and Eastern Europe that were doing quite a lot of interesting things within the digital space. But everyone was having very kind of national approach, and there was content, there was news, there was information, but it was in each and everyone's respective language. So we were trying to kind of pull this together. It wasn't like it was meant to be a community project. It was never like, at the beginning, it was not meant to be anything else. It was not meant to be a business. But in time, it started to grow a bit and gain some attention. We started to do some cooperations with some partners in the region, and eventually a company that was doing, an American company that was doing PR for startups, was acquiring local technology blogs to kind of enhance their portfolio, and that's when they acquired also 150 Seconds, which is not the kind of exit that allows me to buy a small island and get bored, but it was a nice validation of the work that we've done in creating a beautiful product. Obviously, we weren't making a lot of money at the time, as you may imagine. In journalism in Eastern Europe, in particular, there's not a lot of money, and we were also trying to do this as a community project for local entrepreneurial community. So all in all, it was a good outcome and a very interesting experience from which I learned quite a lot.
So after that, you joined Grab in Asia?
Yes. So after I kind of like sold the 150 Seconds, and after a couple of years at Telenav, where I was doing quite a lot of things on the mobility side, where I kind of had the opportunity to learn all the nitty-gritty details of mobility and also operating within the automotive space, but also within mobile applications. The company was an American one that had offices in China. So it was also very helpful because I had exposure to different markets, different type of users, different type of companies and needs, but also working with colleagues from very diverse countries, backgrounds, and so on. So that was, again, another wonderful opportunity to boost the learning part. And just because at Telenav, we were developing certain technologies related to localization, it just turns out that a lot of the ride-hailing companies need exactly the same services, and they are quite expensive to purchase from other third-party providers. And there are a lot of ride-hailing companies interested to create their own localization stack, let's say. And that's the context in which I joined Grab, and I moved to Singapore, and I was there for about 2 years. And then while I was there, people at Bolt reached out. I started to have a conversation. I absolutely loved the culture and the rationale and the business mindset behind it. And I accepted the challenge to come back to Europe and then join Bolt. And I joined as a group product manager, and after some time I was promoted to director, after a bit of time to VP, but it was also because the company was growing. So we were doing quite well in the area that I was responsible for. And then obviously other colleagues were doing the same. Like there were a lot of us that had the opportunity to be promoted and from some perspective to have more responsibility. So that's also a great thing about the culture that we have, because like we do look for talented people to get from other companies, but we're also trying to make sure that the folks that we do have the opportunity to grow consistently and take larger and larger responsibility and ownership within the company.
So talking about that, what is exactly your job as a VP of product? What is the scope? What is the responsibility that you have?
So if you think so I'm responsible for a part of the product at Bolt. And if you look at Bolt as a company that has the ride-hailing vertical, it has the delivery vertical, it has the rentals vertical, and then it has a bunch of services that we call platform, which are reused by all of these teams. And here you have things like maps, you have things like identity and trust, you have things like customer support, you have things like communication and everything that happens in between. Actors on the marketplace, chat, voice over IP, SMS for users to log in, our own internal experimentation platform, and a bunch of different services that kind of constitute the building blocks and the foundation of the software. And then you have the business verticals that live on top of that. So there's these big 4 technology groups, let's say, in the company, and I'm responsible for the platform part, which is the part that supports all the business verticals, which is also why I was actually glad, because I have the opportunity to learn and understand both, like all 3 verticals: rentals, delivery, and ride-hailing, because we kind of like are co-owning some or most of the KPIs, and also making sure that users are getting a good experience and a similar experience across all the apps and all the services of the company.
So it's a strategic choice from day one to have a common platform for all the verticals?
No, it's part of the company evolution. So when I joined, we were having this approach with the Maps team, and we kind of built upon the success of that. And we saw that strategically, it is better to remove some of the complexity that needs a lot of domain expertise from the colleagues focused on the business vertical, so that they can keep the expertise of the business vertical. And then all the complexity and the domain specificity of the rest of the domains that are needed to put a very complex product together are actually solved by specialists, and they are solved in a unique, in a similar way for all of the verticals, because we have, the same user that interacts with all the services. So it's good if they look and feel the same, and if they have, it's good to have one place where you can save all your home and work data. It's like, instead of having many of them and so on.
But having 3 verticals like that,
for now, like 3. There might be more in the future.
Yeah, I guess so. But for me, it's like having 3 different companies, because okay, you're talking about mobility, but rider hailing is totally different from food and delivery. So how do you manage that? And you just said that you probably more in the future. So you will still keep this platform and add like other verticals, or maybe create new companies? I don't know.
So it all depends, right? Like one of the things that I keep saying whenever we talk about what companies should do, right? There's always, oh, like you've been working for so many years in a company and you have some whatever fancy title someone might happen to have, and like you must be an expert, like illuminate us. And then my answer is always like it depends, right? Because it always depends, and there's no one rule. You know, there's not one magic green button that you push and you make everything okay. If you're a startup, then obviously you need to focus on something else. Creating such a structure would be useless, needless. It's suboptimal. What you're choosing and what you need to obtain is immediate growth week to week. So if you are a 5 people startup, 10 people, 15 people startup, creating optimal internal structures is suboptimal from a management perspective. You should focus on immediate output. Now, at a certain moment in time, you see that you have more and more people, and in order for everything to function in sync, then you need to put processes there. I mean, ideally, you would hire smarter people because smarter people need less processes. But anyway, at some moment, you're going to need to have process. Now, the moment you do this process design, which to some extent, I would say this is the main job of any manager. So it just depends on the size of the company. You need to do this architecture design of how the company should be efficient, so that the output continues to be as good as it can be with the current resources allocated. So what that means is that in time, you always need to do these tiny changes, and they kind of overlap with what the company is doing, right? At the very beginning, the company says, hey, this is the cool, shiny new thing. Just try it out. Like, we know it doesn't work perfectly. You shouldn't use it for like extremely critical scenarios, but hey, it's cool and it works. And you usually have your like a very like your first users would be innovators, people that love the new things that pop out. They are totally okay if the service doesn't work for like 20% of the time, right? Like remember at the beginning when every 20-30 minutes there was like a blue whale on Twitter saying, hey, like service is down, servers are not keeping up with the demand. So those are like the early adopters that are fine if their preferred service crashes several times a day. Is just cool. So you need a different type of organization in order to execute on that. That's your goal as a company. But the next step is like you move into early adopters. But people start hearing out about your project, your startup, your business, and then they start coming more and more people. Now they will have different requirements, right? They will not put their credit card, for example, in an app that looks shady. They will expect some sort of customer support. From a data security standpoint, you need to have some processes there. So you need to start acting a bit like more of an adult, let's say, in the company space. So that means that your company will require a certain structure, certain type of responsibilities. And then again, you put more processes on. You get to like the majority of your user base. Again, you need something else, right? Like look at Spotify. Like rewind 10 years and Spotify was like the cool thing, doing something new, and you have playlists and so on. And now it's like a major company, and it creates debate. There's people happy about some stuff. There's people less happy. Huge company, large structure, one of the most successful large companies in Europe. And just because these companies change and grow over time, so does the structure of the management. And because the problems that need to be solved at every single step of these are different, you need to change the company structure. And it's always painful. Like whenever you talk to people in those companies that grows through this accelerated growth, they will always say, oh, 1 or 2 years ago when we were like this company, it was so cool, we knew everyone and so on. But you do need to change it, because otherwise you are less efficient for the new step, the new stage of the development of the company that you're in.
Yeah, we have a question that I wanted to ask later, but as we have it from Timothée Massobio. Opening those verticals one after the other, what was the decision process for it? How do you decide if it fit the product vision, or how you decided to change the vision to fit new and old activities?
Okay, so I joined the Bolt about 2.5 years ago. So some of the decisions were already made when I was here, when I wasn't here, and when I joined, the company was already a unicorn. So it already passed the 1 billion valuation. And actually opening up new verticals is one of the one of the key reasons why our valuation grew during this time, because we are not just like increasing market share and markets in which we are present with ride hailing, but we're building these complementary services. And it all goes down to the vision that I was saying. Like our vision is that we can make transport, we can make cities better by replacing private car ownership. And then we just go about and we solve bits and pieces of that. And obviously we started with ride hailing, and as a lot of other companies did, but we also noticed that there's a considerable overlap between our users and potential users of micromobility that would use bicycles and scooters. The main difference is usually on average the length of the ride and sometimes the budget of the user. But basically, we were already operating in a similar way. We had local operations in all of those cities. We already had some sort of a relationship with local authorities. We already had the users. The users already had the app downloaded. The users already had the credit card added there. There was already a trust in the brand. So from our perspective, if you compare to any other company that would start operating scooters right now, our cost of acquisition is almost zero, right? Because there's 100 million users in the ride-hailing app. So we just open in the respective cities and we have the users. No app to be installed, so low cost of acquisition, no friction upon using the app for the first time because your credit card is already there. So you can start using the service faster. And then you realize that they are actually complementary. And sometimes you use a car, sometimes you use a courier, a scooter. And then you think of the delivery space and you realize that one of the key components of that business is local operations. Local operations that can have can create a relationship with restaurants, that can create a relationship with couriers. But we already did that with drivers in ride hailing. So we held all the local structure. So again, from a launch perspective, it was easier for us because we have the local operations already in place. And then we went back to the app and we said, of course, also in delivery, we already have all the users. They already have all the credit card. We already know their home address and work address because they've been traveling there. So from this perspective, that's what I meant when we would look at the super app approach. Key metrics of the business, such as cost of acquisition and customer lifetime value, are dramatically better if you can have a strong value proposition as a super app. And I'm highlighting the strong value proposition because you need to be very good at what you do. Just the fact that you have many services, but they are not having the right value for the customer or the right quality, will help you very little. Low cost of acquisition is great, but the customer lifetime value is something that you are assuming to have in case you have more services, but it actually boils down to the quality and the value proposition that you can give to the user. But we are very likely doing quite well on the value proposition side because we always, like from the very beginning, we were structured behind a very simple value proposition. And we said, we will focus on making sure that our services are the most affordable and the fastest. We might not always succeed, but that's our goal. And we will always optimize for that. Well, there's companies that would optimize for, better, shinier user experience in the app, more exquisite things in the cars, like having drinks or sweets and so on. So there's a lot of things that you can propose to the user that are your main value proposition. The question is, are these your users' main needs? And when we looked at the domain, at least for the ride-hailing part, but for the delivery part, we said, at some moment, this will become some sort of a red ocean, right? Because the differentiation between services will not be so much, right? If you take the Bolt app or you take any of the competitors' app, you will see that to 90+% all the features are there. So from a functionality perspective, they are quite similar in many regards. But the difference is in how we approach the business, because a lot of people say, like Uber or other companies are so similar. And yet, when it comes to unit economics, they are so different because just the conditions are different. Like a lot of companies such as Uber or Grab was situated in an area geographically and market where there were a lot of investors. So they ended up getting millions and tens of millions of dollars in investment. And they directed those investments for fast market growth, expansion, and acquiring market share. That was, a great solution for them. because their setup was they had a lot of investment, and that was probably the wisest thing to do. Whereas Bolt was born in Estonia, Northern Eastern Europe, much smaller markets, very few investors. So we just had to be extremely, ridiculously efficient, both in terms of the amount of people that can work in this, but also in critically choosing the features that we want to develop. So we extremely focused on those that bring highest value possible to the end user, so that the user would come to our platform for cheaper. We would not be able to afford the cost of acquisition of having endless bonuses that some other companies might do. But then we believe that our value proposition of making sure that the rides are there as fast as possible and at as low cost as possible will create that flywheel that will allow us to continuously grow. It seems that we were right in choosing those metrics. But again, retroactively, with this retrospect, it's easy to say that, hey, that was a good idea. At the time, it was just a different combination of the unit economics.
Wow. And you started to reply to my next question, but it's fine.
I'm sorry for that.
No, it's okay. It's very interesting. You know, it's fine. I don't mind my questions. But my question was, how did you manage to emerge in this market, which was already very busy? Because you talked about Uber and the Sweets and others. It's quite courageous to come in 2013 and to do the same thing. So how did you find the difference? What is your real differentiation? You started to say very efficient and low cost. Still the same recipe today?
Yes. So we were extremely focused on making sure that we're very efficient, also from choosing what we do. So we were focusing on this ruthless prioritization to make sure that we deliver high value to the customer faster. Now, what happened, for example, when the COVID epidemic exploded and everyone went into lockdowns, almost all the other players within the ride-hailing space, for example, started letting people go, and everyone let go from like 15 to 25% of their total number of employees. And that was kind of like a proof for us that some of the companies that we were competing against were way too big. They were not that efficient, let's say, with the investors' money. But we are quite efficient because we didn't let anyone go. In fact, even during the COVID pandemic, we continued to hire people. We doubled the valuation within the first year of the COVID pandemic, even though the market conditions were extremely hard for basically economic and business growth. But we managed to increase the GMV just because we opened new verticals. Again, timing helped because we already started and opened the delivery vertical. When COVID came, obviously a lot of the drivers in the ride-hailing space were left without customers, so they quickly switched to our delivery business, which was great because we already had the business in place, so we could expand it faster. So all our partners were still making sure that they can make a living, they can make nice money by working on the platform. And also because we were extremely slim in terms of the team working on the items, it was very easy for us to kind of like switch and say, hey, let's put more priority in this domain. And we didn't have to let anyone go. In fact, we continued hiring.
Mm-hmm. Do you consider your company as an agile organization?
Oh, yes. I mean, agile, not necessarily from the definition of agile software development, because that's a whole different story that we can do. And like I haven't seen two companies that have the same interpretation of agile software development. That's a different discussion to have. But yes, we do move extremely fast. So for example, just to give you an example, Bolt Drive, the product which involves you opening a car with your phone, driving it around and then parking it and then locking it with your phone, was a service that was launched in 4 months. From the moment we decided, yes, we see an opportunity, we see a significant overlap with everything else that we do, so we want to enter in this market. In 4 months, the cars were already purchased, they already had the hardware installed, all the functionalities in the app were there. All the backend capabilities were there. cards were being personalized with Bolt, and like the service was ready to go, and we launched in 4 months. Bolt Market, the same. Like we were looking at how to better address the grocery sector, and we were thinking, should we go into the next day delivery, same day delivery, quick commerce, and again, just this domain in itself, we can have like other people have way more knowledge than I do here, but it's extremely complex with very subtle differences in unit economics. So we eventually decided that we would invest more in the quick commerce part, and we would open our own stores in several countries. And again, from decision that, okay, we looked into this business, we decided this is how we would want us to execute it. In 4 months, we had the first shop open and we started accepting orders. Of course, the amount of learning, but the only reason why we do that is we value learning. And whenever we make decisions, and we are a $8 billion company, way more mature in some aspects, but quite immature in other areas. As I said, like we're opening new verticals and we know very little about them. And we always look at things whenever we want to create a new project or develop a new feature. We always try to think whether is this happening in a space where we have enough learning or not? Because sometimes there's value in things being efficient and very well planned, and sometimes there's value in learning. And why build a super complicated feature for 3 months when with a small, scrappy proof of concept, you can find out all the learning that you need in 2 weeks. And if you're going in the right direction, you invest another 2 weeks, and then you invest another 2 weeks, and then you build on it. Every single delivery, you have an uplift in output. So the business is growing every couple of weeks, and is growing in a controlled way because you learn. You know which is the direction that is optimal for you. And if you look at the right helix space, we know that the value of proper planning right now, for example, is much higher than the value of learning, because we've been doing this for many years. There's enough books, blogs, literature out there for anyone to learn quite a lot about the domain. So I'm not saying there's nothing left to learn, but most of the important stuff and the impactful stuff is pretty much clarified within the industry. Whereas in other newer parts, such as quick commerce or rentals domains, there's still so much unknown. Most of the companies are very new. No one has done it for enough years. So then we say the value of learning is higher than the value of planning there. So we then optimize for that. So if your question is back to, are you agile? As I keep on saying, depends. What is the problem to solve? Like if the problem to solve is be efficient, then yes, we are agile in the sense that we try to be more efficient. If we need to learn, then we adapt. So a lot of the colleagues in the company are operating at like kind of like different levels of agility based on the type of problems that they need to solve, because we try to optimize for output. Highest output is what we would want as a company.
So, for example, what did you learn with, I don't know, one of these markets, the grocery one? Because you come with your background from cars and you go to the grocery shop. What did you learn at the beginning?
Oh, like hundreds and thousands of things. So I will say something from our domain. I will not go into some of the learnings that the colleagues in vertical found out, but very simple things. So, for example, you have a order for food. And then a courier is being allocated to go get your food from the respective restaurant and bring it to you. Now, there's a question if that courier is driving a car, is on a bicycle, on an electric scooter, or on foot. And obviously, we know that. So whenever our backend system calculates how long it would take the courier to get to the restaurant in order to get the food, you don't see this as a customer, but for us it's important because the courier needs to get there at the right time, so it doesn't wait for too long for the food to be cooked, but your food also doesn't get cold. So we want our courier to arrive there just before the food is finished cooking, so it's like done, fresh, ready to pack. And this is something that you as a user, you don't see. Like you think there's like someone just chilling there waiting for your food to be cooked, but we don't want that. Like we want to make sure that our courier partners are not waiting needlessly. They are as active financially as they can, because if they deliver more orders in a certain amount of time, they make more money. And it's very important for us that our drivers and our couriers are like financially well rewarded for their work. So what happened when we looked at, hey, let's calculate the time that's needed for the courier to get to the restaurant so the food is warm, we realized that there's big differences because of the location of the restaurant. So yes, you can get in a ride-hailing type of calculation in front of the restaurant, but if you are with a car, you need to park. And that's going to take sometimes 5 to extra 10 minutes, and it's going to take you another 200-300 meters to walk to the restaurant. So that just adds up another 3 to 5 minutes in which your food might get cold. Because the bicycle, the scooter, the walking, we calculate all the way up to in front of the restaurant, but there's no other waiting time. There's no other buffer that needs to be added. So then when we had this assumption that we may be getting the parking wrong, because all our system was used to create the ride-hailing distances and times of arrival. And then we definitely saw that in the restaurants in city center in peak hours, we tend to be wrong just because we did not account for the drivers needed to park, and they can't park in front of the restaurant, so they need to walk. So this was one of the learning, that all the system that calculates ETAs needs to take into account the fact that cities are busy and couriers need to park and walk in some locations. Scale this to thousands of restaurants, millions of orders. And that in itself, that sounds like some quite simple learning can be transformed into kind of like millions in terms of impact at the yearly revenue level.
And when you say you start a new vertical like Bolt rentals, how do you decide where you try it, in which city, and do you have surveys? So someone is just saying, let's try it in Estonia, or no, I knew some guys in London. How do you decide that?
So there's a lot of things going into that thought process, but quite usually the thought process ends up being, we're going to test it in Tallinn, in Estonia first. Obviously, whenever we're trying new services, in Tallinn, we basically learn how it works so that we know that it can scale and it functions. And the reason why we do that, we have many employees. So we have like our own mini city, so we can easily do real hundreds of orders every day for whatever vertical. And then we end up that on some Android device, there might be a bug. We would end up seeing that, hey, orders placed in these conditions might not. So we learn all the potential real world problems because that's the complex part of this online to offline businesses, right? Like if you need to have just all your interaction within the app with a certain amount of testing, you can have a decent level of confidence that there will be less problem when client meets product. Some problems, but less. A real world is absolutely random. And things like rain and wind and strikes and someone not making it in time at work at a certain restaurant can affect all of this. So how do you incorporate the randomness? So for example, one of the interesting example with Bolt Market, when we launch in Tallinn is like during the summer, temperatures go up to like 26 degrees. We open during the summer. And then we realized that obviously we need a lot of fridges in there because we want all our drinks to be served cold. What we did not account in that immediate days after the decision was that they will produce a lot of heat. And in Estonia, in general, rental spaces don't have air conditioning. Because there's no need for that during the summer. So then chocolates tends to melt. So we had to learn that in practice, right? So, I mean, this is like a frivolous example, but you can multiply this by tens of thousands of potential problems. Where do couriers sit? Like you don't want them necessarily to like wait outside on the street to like pick up some of the merchandise. You need to create an area inside where they can also stay comfortably so they don't disturb the traffic in the region and so on. So those are all learnings that we need to have because no one operated that. This is the main difference between like a startup and a regular company. Like if you take the example of a supermarket, for example, which is like regular companies and regular businesses are great businesses as well. It's just that we learn almost everything about them. Like if you want to open a supermarket, the whole process is probably written for like a few decades. look at how many inhabitants you have in the area, determine how many square meters the shop needs to be, you know how many square meters the parking needs to be, you know how many square meters of dairy products, of meat products, paper products, and so on. The amount of innovation that happens there is incremental. Like the fact that we completely change the business model, that means that a lot of the learnings that are needed to happen did not happen yet. Like we didn't move around cities in electrical scooters, and we didn't know about a lot of the problems that could happen. They happen in reality, and then we try to fix them. Sometimes it's on us, sometimes it's on the local authorities to provide facilities within the cities. But it's a continuous learning process, and also like the people that we end up working with. Part of our interviewing process, like we are fortunate in this period of time that a lot of extremely talented people applied to Bolt. And I would encourage people to do that. It's an amazing company. It's just that whenever we do the interview process, we always try to test about the thought process. So the fact that someone has the skills, but not the mindset, is something that we try to pay attention to. We operate in an environment of high uncertainty. And so there's always the risk that you make mistakes, and then you need to quickly test, iterate, and learn. Now, if there are people that are comfortable and happy to do that, and they train their skills for that, that's a great match for us. There are people that don't operate like that, but they are extremely good professionals, right? Like imagine the biggest software products in the world. You wouldn't want like Microsoft or Apple to experiment with every tiny little thing in what is your like daily office environment, let's say. That thing needs to work. That needs to be very well planned. You don't want your software in like trains to have like, let's test what happens here. No, that type of software needs to be extremely accurate. You can't test in production things. So that's great software built by very good individuals, smart professionals. It's just that the type of skills that are needed here are more of operating within a high uncertainty environment and trying to find out the optimal way to solve a client's need, let's say.
Yeah, interesting. And coming back to the product in itself, how do you prioritize the new features, new items who come up in your meetings and brainstorming? Is there a special team for innovation? Is there a way that everyone can propose anything when he wants, and then you discuss about it? How does it work? How do you promote the new ideas or the product?
So the structure is quite flat, and there's a saying in product management that a product manager is the CEO of the product, which I was always making fun that it's some kind of encouragement that you're going to get a lot of responsibility but very little money. But jokes aside, the way we operate in Bolt, it is indeed under this like extreme ownership. So our folks in our colleagues in product management do have quite a lot of ownership over their domain and responsibility, which is why we try to hire people that are extremely good at operating independently without constant directions. So when you look at how we choose the things that we do, is basically exactly what I was mentioning before. Everyone in their respective domain is trying to come up with the best potential ways to increase the output. And the output can be very different, right? Like most users just see when I say users, you think rider, but from our perspective, our drivers are also users. The restaurants and the couriers are also users. So we need to make sure that it's a marketplace, right? Like we basically facilitate the meeting between someone that needs a ride and someone that has a car under local compliance regulation, but we are essentially a marketplace, and we're trying to optimize the time and financial gains of the driver. And then on the other side, make sure that the service is the best possible service, as I said, in terms of time and price for the end consumer. So then all the ideas that we have about things that we could improve in the app are being put through this perspective. How much GMV, how much revenue will this actually produce in reality? How much uplift in our business will it produce? And then obviously the other part, which is very well known to everyone working in software engineering, was the effort needed to build and launch this capability. So the difference between the two is obviously the ROI for every investment that you do, because you allocate 3 engineers, a designer, and a product manager. So you have you have a cost to build a certain feature, and then you have an estimated impact. And we do a series of tests or data analysis to kind of highlight the potential impact of a feature on a business. And whenever we do roadmap, whether we do them quarterly or the yearly level, we always have this like list of projects in which we have the presumed ROI for each and every one of them. And obviously managers go and kind of question and poke holes into the way that the ROI was calculated, either on the cost side or on the potential improvement side. But the result of that is an extremely efficient, rational, and non-subjective list of things that we should do. Because whatever has a small ROI, small impact of the business is a cool idea, nice to have, maybe some other time. And usually the time comes because the business keeps on growing. So this is how we do prioritization. We prioritize based on the supposed impact on the business. And whenever the feature is done and we release it on the market, we obviously test with A/B tests the result of that. And if the feature is working similarly as predicted, we continue testing throughout the rollout in all the countries, because this is extremely specific to what we do. Countries are so very different. Users, drivers or riders are extremely different. Social conditions, meteorological conditions. During the pandemic, we always like, hey, is this an open market? Is this a closed market? Is this a market about to open or to close? And you could see that and you know, you launch a new feature and you say it's not working, but you don't know it's not working because it's like it's absolutely pouring rain and no one can get any cars there, or you know, there's like total COVID lockdown and no one is taking our brand new shiny offer. What's happening? Well, it's a COVID lockdown. So that's why we always do this geographical A/B test, trying to understand the local specificities. And this is where the complexity lies. So many cities in so many countries, and we need to make features that kind of help the largest number of users. Of course, we do specific things for Europe. We do a lot of very specific things for Africa. We are like almost half of the business that we have is in Africa, and it's an area where we are having majority market share in quite a lot of locations. So then we do these A/B tests, and at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, we look back and try to see if we guessed right in the roadmap. So we always do at the end of the year also the impact calculation. So we presume that we're going to have this much impact with that many engineers, designer, product manager, and so on. Here's what we managed to deliver, because things will change during the quarter or the year. And here's the impact that we ended up having. And we pay attention to anchor what we do to that, because we believe that if we create impact, that means we brought very good value to our end users. And that's basically why we exist as a company, not to just build cool new things.
Time flies, but I still have 1 or 2 questions, and we have another question in the audience. But my next question is for the HR thing. Is it difficult these days to find the great talent, you know, for your product? It was already hard before the pandemic to find great people. They are more and more expensive. How do you manage this? Do you recruit? Do you outsource? How do you?
We rarely or almost never outsource. So we have our own recruitment team in-house, and then we have a pretty solid people's team in the company, considering that we grew quite a lot and we need to grow more. Hiring was definitely harder before I joined the company. So I know this from stories of colleagues, just because the company was smaller. Usually when startups are towards the beginning of their journey, there's less confidence that they will end up growing or they will even exist in 1 or 2 years' time. So definitely in those conditions, it was much harder to recruit. Luckily, the company grew quite fast in Baltics. And then the hiring pool was also Baltics. So the company became popular, and then it started recruiting easier in the region. And at every investment round, the larger the number of money raised or the final valuation. Obviously, more and more publications are sharing this, more and more people become interested in the story and how we do things in the company. And the company gets more popular. So right now we are extremely fortunate that we have a lot of applicants to a lot of our positions, but we also need to hire way much more. So we do have more people applying, but we do reach out a lot to people, and a lot of the managers are also doing individual reach out. Myself and other colleagues are also like looking at LinkedIn and reaching out to talented folks and asking them if they would consider joining us. And just because we have this extremely rational, pragmatic, and non-subjective approach in which we kind of focus on merit and focus on output, it kind of creates this safe environment for good professionals, because a lot of companies, you have this like politics and like tiny little tribes of people trying to create their own subjective reality. And it happens, right? Like we're humans, we are storytellers, which is why we try to anchor things on objective, measurable things, just so that we can keep a safe and honest environment, which is dedicated to, you know, merit, basically, to people that end up having a best output. And I think that's helpful. People that do join us and they do find a good fit, they come in, they are happy, they recommend other people, they reach out to their former colleagues. I have former colleagues from Grab, former colleagues from Telenav that have joined. I think there's more than 10 or 15 of them right now, of colleagues that I worked with before, and then now they are colleagues of mine in Bolt as well. And that's quite important to make sure that you know, like you have happy employees, because they will recommend the company to other friends or former colleagues.
Do you recruit all over the world with people who work remotely, or you have people in Estonia who work for the Estonian market, and so on?
So in terms of offices for engineering, product, and design, we have 3 main offices, and they are in Tallinn, in Warsaw, in Poland, and in Bucharest, in Romania. Obviously, we have offices in almost all of the countries where we exist, because we have local colleagues in operations that do the local work with drivers, couriers, restaurants, and so on. So because of that, we took advantage of this flexibility. So when the COVID crisis came, we started to be way more open with locations. So right now, we recommend people to be in one of our main offices, but we don't ask people to uproot their family and move their life. So if we find that, and right now we, for example, in platform teams, we just, I think this year we hired people in like Netherlands, in Italy, in Spain. We're hiring a lot of people in Germany. We're opening up a new office in Berlin. So we're hiring a lot of people there as well. So and we're also looking to, we have a large offices in Africa as well. So in one of my teams, we have a lot of people in South Africa hired, and we're looking to hire more colleagues all over the countries in Africa where we're present. Diversity is extremely important for us, and we look at it also because we operate in a wide variety of geographies. We look at it also from this like geographical perspective. We want to make sure that we get local input from as many countries as possible. And even though on engineering side, for example, like in Tallinn, you're going to see people coming from Estonia or neighboring countries. So there's people from Latvia, there's people from Lithuania, there's colleagues from Ukraine, from Belarus, from Kazakhstan, from Russia, but it's just local specificity. When you look at then at the other offices, you'll see people from that respective region. There will be few people that will relocate to Bucharest or to Warsaw. It's just going to be local folks. But in the Tallinn office, there's a wide number of expats, and then we also hire in the rest of the locations.
Great. My last question comes from the audience, from a kind of crazy bachelor who said, what are your thoughts on the autonomous, example, self-driving cars, IoT economy, and the device humans own, providing them with passive income opportunities?
So if we only have 1.5 hours left to answer this question. No, I mean, like it's a huge domain. One of the things that I'm responsible for in the company is also our R&D project for autonomous driving. We look at it from more perspectives. One of them is obviously the robotaxi use case. So autonomous driving for the use case of the ride-hailing vertical. But we also look at the concept of box on wheels for autonomous deliveries. We also look at remote driving. If you look at Bolt Drive, for example, we have cars that are being left by our users in areas where we might not have new users. So we want to move them ideally automatically without sending someone, move them to areas where we know we're going to have new users. So there's a bunch of different use cases where some sort of autonomous capabilities are useful to us. And obviously, if we would look towards public transportation, there are things that can be optimized there. Unfortunately, for now, the fully level 5 autonomous vehicle within an urban environment keeps being 10 years away for the past many years. And it will likely stay in a similar way from some perspective. So there are ways to solve some of these challenges. It just as cost-wise, you need to equip the vehicle with so many expensive sensors that you would actually cover the cost with a driver for a very long period of time. So it just makes it less affordable. So I think there will be a moment in time when the price of all the hardware and the data that is needed, because you're going to need high definition maps, you're going to need point cloud map data from LiDARs that go through the cities and understand the city in 3D in real time. So there are elements of the technology that we see that they become more and more available, cheaper and cheaper. So it will happen. It just takes a bit of time until all the necessary technology will get to that level and the price in which it would become something feasible. But the transformation is absolutely tremendous, right? Like it's not just going to be that the drivers, there will be less need of drivers. We already right now have way more demand than drivers. Like we could serve many rides more if we would have more drivers, or if we would have autonomous vehicles to supplement drivers, especially in the evenings, especially in peak hours. And that would be great to have autonomous vehicle to supplement whenever you have peaks in production. Because even if you'd operate only with on-demand vehicle, you still can't serve peaks, right? Like you're not going to have a ridiculous numbers of cars just not doing anything, and just to make sure that in peak demand, you're going to have cars for everyone. So it's still a matter of unit economics. It's going to be like a gradual change towards it, but having in general electric autonomous vehicles, I think it would be a great thing for humanity. Think of how many accidents will be avoided. Think of like the loss of life. Think of the parking space that is not needed in the city. 20 to 30% of the cities is now occupied by cars being parked. Now imagine all that real estate can return back to humans. And we can use it for parks, we can use it for commercial purposes, we can use it to build cheaper houses for people in central locations in cities. So it will impact a lot of areas of our life. So looking at it just from like the ride-hailing and taxi perspective, yes, we do from a technology perspective, but I think it's one of the most fascinating changes in the world that's going to happen during our lifetime.
Great last words. Thank you very much. Thank you for the question in the audience. That was fascinating. I really loved this conversation. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, that was a special PentaBAR. We'll do others like that because it's very interesting. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Loredana in backstage, who is going to switch off this great PentaBAR, and see you very soon, Adrian.
Thank you, Cyril. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.